Thank you very much for joining us.
Sure.
So let's kick it off with just in your own words, 2 minutes about what excites you and what is the kind of focus for your investing these days.
You know, there's not one thing that excites me out there, and the reality is that technology is changing everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the shared economy is certainly interesting. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of industries that still kind of like working on stickies and pens and pencils that certainly still need to be disrupted. And, you know, like when you see one idea, you end up seeing like 5 of the same ones within 2 weeks, because that's
it always
just how the
happens
world
at the same
works.
time, right?
And, you know, I'm really looking for super smart entrepreneurs that are filling voids in the marketplace.
Okay, so let's go right into that. So super smart. There's
That's a
so
big word
let's
there.
live it that exactly. Let's talk about it. So I mean, I think you know I've spent 18 years on the other side, and now investing the last couple of years. And when you say super smart, so what are some of the personality traits in that you love in super smart? But I also want to know a couple that you hate, because it also, the negative stuff also helps entrepreneurs hopefully grow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty honest and transparent, even to people where I turn down and they ask why, and I'm really specific about why it isn't for me. I mean, super smart is such a broad term, but it really is, there's a fire in their belly, and there's someone who, I can work with. I believe in them. I believe they're smart and they're scrappy, and there's a carrot dangling in front of their nose, and they're going to figure it out no matter what comes their way.
Do you have a couple examples? I'm sure you've seen so many different entrepreneurs.
God,
But so give me a couple examples. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure we both could. But what I love is there's this tipping point that you see a lot of people, and then all of a sudden something goes like that. Oh my God! And it might not be the right time to invest or get involved, but it is pretty clear frequently. And I'm sure, have you maybe some way that somebody reached out to you, or a hustle that was aggressive and directed enough but not over the top? Or do you have any stories that you can tell that kind of highlights that hustle passion?
I mean, I'm invested in like 85 companies.
Okay.
I have a couple in the pipeline. I'm, believe it or not, involved in all of them at some level.
Okay.
You know, I'm like super efficient. And, you know, I would say probably 35% of those I gave their first dollar to. So, you know, you're watching someone that you believe in really start, and then slowly, and then all of a sudden. I think what's interesting is watching entrepreneurs who struggled to raise money at the beginning, figured out their product, and then started to get real traction, built their business like I always thought they would, and then finding, you know, they're oversold on their next round, and, you know, the business just keeps accelerating. And also to hear them pitch. I mean, to watch someone, particularly women who come in that, you know, under-promise, over-deliver, crossing their T's, dotting their I's, and then as their businesses take off, I mean, their attitude changes in regards to the way that they pitch their business. Sure. And that's really, really exciting. And
so when you say you get really involved with them, tell us a little bit about the aspects where you think you add the most value, in addition to money and network. But I'm sure there's many different things, but 1 or 2 specifically that is the go-to. I got to talk to Joanne.
Well, you know, being an entrepreneur is a lonely job. I mean, so, you know, if you don't have a co-founder, or even if you do have a co-founder, many times it's really not an equal co-founder, like you brought in someone later to be your kind of co-founder, but they're not a 50-50 split. I think that for many, it's really just a sounding board or even a cheerleader. You know, I mean, today someone emailed me, and you know, the business is, you know, finally taking off. And I always knew it would take off, but it's very different when you're in those trenches. And I think it's just great to be able to, you know, say, I got to tell Joanne, and, you know, someone to say back like, that is awesome. You're doing such a great job. I'm so excited. How can I help you get to the next, you know, point? Let's get together. Let's get on the phone and sort of talk about what are the high notes, the low notes. You know, what's the roadmap? Maybe I can help you think about the roadmap in a different way. So I think most of it is really conversational.
Is it conversation, which makes a lot of sense because I play a similar role, but the conversation, I'm sure some of your background on the business side, you leverage all of the different aspects of your background, but does one come up? Is there marketing? Is it distribution? Is it this? Is it that?
It's everything.
It's everything. There's not one in your mind that pops.
No, I think that, I'm still learning something new every day in every single business. But I do, if you look at the investments that I've made, there's really not a vertical that I'm sort of partial to, except for women. And really, they all have the same problems at the very beginning. They're growing a foundation. They don't know who to hire, what makes sense. One of the entrepreneurs I'm invested in, who's really starting to majorly pick up steam, she equated the whole thing to whack-a-mole. Every time, something gets good, something pops up out of somewhere else,
true.
And, or, you thought you hired the right person that you spent 3 months finding is the perfect CEO, and they're there 3 weeks, and you're just like, oh my God, this person's awful, bad culture fit, out the door, start again. And so I think a lot of those things happen to do at the beginning of the businesses, which I actually prefer, certainly as they become more mature and they move on and they get funding from, institutions or, which VCs, you could call institutions, is that, I feel great that they're in the right hands, but I still stick my fingers in there.
So yesterday we had a very interesting, very genuine, transparent conversation with Lane Becker, who had a challenging situation with Get Satisfaction recently. So obviously not every company is a success. A majority of them don't. And so tell us a little bit about, because your kind of conversation and adding expertise to new entrepreneurs from everybody else, when you see it's not going to work, or they're asking for more money and you've decided not to invest, how do you help them through that phase in a way where it's constructive to them? How do you usually interact on those difficult times?
I mean, I've been super lucky. I've only had 3 companies fail.
Okay, so tell us about those. So that is fantastic.
I mean, one of them was a disaster. But one of the best things that ever happened to me, because what I learned through that experience was tremendous.
So what was that?
It really was someone that didn't listen to anyone and thought they knew what they were doing. They had a bunch of friends, very successful, thought they could be part of the whole, bro team. And, he went through a shitload of money incredibly quickly. And not listening to anything anyone said in a board meeting, and sort of went loosey-goosey every single month, to the point where, oh my God, I can't make payroll on Monday. So it was a really interesting ride, and a lot of lessons learned, and a lot of red flags I saw at the beginning that I chose to ignore.
Interesting. So what were, without giving away the details, but the red flags, which ones were there that don't fit with you potentially? And tell us a little bit about that side of the story, just so people know, because I'm sure 99% of the people in the audience will have those challenges.
Yeah.
Whether or not it kills their company, hopefully not, or it helps improve them. I think talking more about that stuff, the reality, really helps.
Totally agree. Bad documents, really bad documents.
So not really keeping everything organized in the back office.
Terrible legal documents, terrible.
Was that the lawyer or the entrepreneur's management, or both?
It's at the end of the day, it's the entrepreneur.
Exactly.
Okay. At the end of the day, it's all on you.
Yep.
And so, bad legal documents, bad partnerships that went awry, that were poorly negotiated on the way out. I mean, there were so many multiple things. But I love the business. Big mistake.
So was that the kind of blinders in the beginning when you saw red flags, that you loved the business, you wanted to work, but it wasn't betting on the entrepreneur, it was the business? And
the people that were also had said yes, I kind of came in the tail end and ended up kind of running the whole deal, were like major investors, like the people you want in your deal. Which
so there was probably another flag there. There was probably another flag there that
actually now there is.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was interesting. And then I had another one, same thing. Didn't ask for help. But I do have someone that recently went out to raise a bridge loan, and she didn't. She misdid a lot of milestones, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs do this. Is that they start listening to everyone around them. And, one day goes by, 2 days go by, 2 weeks go by, and they are literally going down so many different paths at once because they want to make everyone happy that's involved in their businesses. And, I always say to entrepreneurs, if you succeed, all the investors think they are the smartest people in the room. If you fail, all on you. And so she got into this place where she needed to raise more money and really didn't get much done in 12 to 18 months. And I think she's really scared of failure. And so she went back to raise more money, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to participate in this one. Now, I have actually participated in basically every single deal that I've been in, except the ones that failed, of course. And she's been hustling. And she has basically realized exactly what she did wrong. And I was in a meeting with her where another investor was saying, well, blah, 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 blah. And she basically, no, that is not what we're going to be doing. This is what we're focusing on. This is the vision. And I was like, huh.
So did you get more positive?
And I said to her, you know what? You've been super scrappy.
Great.
And it's great to see. And I know that I've been holding, back. And you keep asking and asking because other people want to know too. But I'll come back in.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about the blog. How do you choose stories? It's a visual tech event. So we just had a great panel about, visual literacy. We have images in marketing, images in images and video everywhere. It's how we communicate. And you tell stories about a mixture, it seems, of personal and business and inspirations. I want to hear about the AHA, blog a little bit more, the blog post. And just, how do you choose, and why don't you add more pictures and video?
I should, because I have a daughter who's an artist.
Oh, great.
And,
what kind of art?
Well, she's going through many iterations.
All right, we'll leave it at that.
Is a photographer. Now
Great.
is like working on technology and 3D, some of the new things that are happening in the art world. And actually she was worked on a piece from Ian Chang, which if anyone went to the Frieze when you walked in, it was that huge piece that was like moving in video. It's cool. Anyway, so I think visual is so easy to wrap our arms around. I am pleasantly surprised with the success of Medium in regards to long form, but to watch a video, to capture a look, and I think that is why Instagram or Snapchat or any of those things have been so successful, because it's so easy to communicate through a photo.
So if you're going to add more photos or video, what would you do? So you start with a template. There's a picture there, and depends. How do you choose? I know these are little basic, silly questions.
Yeah, no, they're not.
And a little bit in the middle, because then I want to evolve into the companies that are probably interacting with those.
Yeah, I write what I write, and then.
Is it a spontaneous thing I'm going to do it, or do you have an outline and you have everything set before I want to cover this in the next 6 months, or you wake up in the morning and say, I got to write this?
I do not wake up in the morning and say, oh my God, I have no content today. What am I going to write? I don't. My husband wakes up every morning, God knows, like 5 in the morning, and he writes every day. I could not do that.
I can't either.
I can't do it. But what I do is, over the course of my week, I'll make notes to myself. Like I'll be thinking of something, and I'll be like, and my brain starts going, and I make a note to myself, and I'm like, okay, you should blog about this.
So things move to the top of the list, and then things get pushed down.
Right, and so really, over the course of the weekend, usually on Sunday, I'll sit down and I'll write 6 or 7 blog posts.
And how do you choose the images, and why aren't there more?
After I write them, then I go and I think.
So it's after. It's not. It doesn't start with the.
No,
why not?
It doesn't. It just doesn't. It starts with an idea, and then I go back into the internet basically, and I think about the kind of picture that I want to use that will describe the post that I just wrote. Because I think it's really important to have a visual.
I can't wait to see one just with all pictures and no text.
Well, food.
Just in case.
Food is visual. Today I posted a bunch of photos that
I was a little busy today. Sorry, I couldn't check it out.
I saw a lot of photos that I saw at the Frieze, and I was just like, here's what I liked. Really simple stuff.
Okay, so in relationship to visual content, you've got some companies, a couple, that are actually, one's presenting later today, one's competing today. And both of them have, one's in the medical space, and one's in parts. Well, I was going to figure out how you wanted to describe that. So tell us about those two companies, and then others that have commerce related, and how important is images in there, in their minds and in your mind.
Yeah, both these companies that are here today, Capture Proof and PartPick, is purely visual. And, both those women entrepreneurs are women. And I spoke to both of them, and I thought they were both dynamic. I love what they were doing. There was no doubt that, in my mind, that they were going to succeed at what they started. It was going to take a while to get there, but that's always the road. And, PartPick, to me, was like a total duh. The Shazam for parts. It's on, it can be anything from something at Home Depot to medical to cars. You can go on and on and on. And And I thought she had spent a lot of time and thought process about going about this. It made sense to me. Visual, versus going through, a yellow pages that you go to some of these old hardware stores that are this thick to find the right screw. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous.
But so that example, I mean, when you say it in that regard, obviously we're focused here in this kind of sector, where it's a huge sector. I think it incorporates everything in life, but it's visual.
It's visual.
After the fact, now that you have these two, is there thinking of other verticals that might be visual in your life, of taking pictures of shopping, of food, of anything that says, oh, this is interesting. I've gotten 2 new companies with great female entrepreneurs. Are there others out there now that actually, oh, that's more interesting because it relates to what you've just invested in? Or is it really just the entrepreneurs and the market?
It's really the entrepreneurs first, always first. I always think it's like a house, right? If you buy a house, you can never move the house. But you can fix the house. You can actually rip the house down to its foundation and rebuild it.
Probably not the right thing to do with the entrepreneur.
Right, but you've seen them do it. And you've seen plenty who have completely said, this is not working.
If they say it's okay, right. From the investor side.
Oh, that's not what the investors are supposed to do.
Exactly.
You're the entrepreneur, right. You're the idea person, and the executor.
So in the other companies that you have in the portfolio, in retrospect, obviously after you make the decision, are there other companies that really do leverage images and video? And have you seen any trends that they want to increase that, or has it popped up at all in discussion?
Certainly.
Like, give us a couple examples.
I mean, Food 52 is a perfect example. Started out really as like a shared economy, a recipe site from the crowd. That you have every week a recipe that wins the prize, and then they get into the cookbook at the end of the year, and then went into commerce, and then went into videos around how to cut an onion, how to do certain things. Because listen, we all know that if there's video, people stay longer, people watch them. They have to be very clever. I'm about to invest in a company that is all video,
Great.
I'm not gonna today, but
just saying that, that's great.
All they do is video. I mean, it totally makes sense to me what she's doing. And Mouth is doing the same thing. They're an aggregator of indie food products, and they're showing photos of the makers of the food, but there's also videos that are coming in addition to, so you can see what's going on. In regards to clothing, I think it's super important. I mean, you can see how it's worn, how it's draped, what makes sense. Visual is so important. I think someone told me yesterday I think it's on Instagram, that the second largest group of pictures is food, which makes sense, right?
Do you photograph or capture videos in the family, or with your own in traveling around in life, or is that your daughter who's the artist?
No, I mean, I do. Not as much as...
Posting to Instagram, have as many followers as the 250,000 as our photographer this morning?
No, I don't. I really, I don't Instagram as much as I did in the...
You did earlier?
I did earlier.
What happened?
I just... there's only so many hours in the day. Things just sort of fall through the wayside.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I've got tons of questions. Obviously, we're going to open it up to others to have questions in a second as well. Raise your hands, and maybe Becca or somebody else can move the mic around. Feel free. We still have a bunch of more time, but I want to make it as interactive as possible. And obviously, Joanne, if you have questions for me, it can be a two-sided street, but I'll make it easy and keep on asking them. It's whatever you want. So tell us, let's go back a little bit to the entrepreneurs, because obviously you're investing a lot. You're active. You continue to be active. And what's the best way, since there's not really a sector focus or other things that helps narrow things down? Obviously, there's a bias, which is great for women. But what other things?
Men have to be even better. Yes.
Great. Perfect. What's the best way to get you to a yes, rather than the passion and the other things this morning? There's probably steps. Like one of my favorite blog posts from Mark Suster, even though quite long, is still great. The invest in lines, not dots.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of my favorite lines from Mark ever.
I love it. I use it all the time, and I quote him all the time. I'm not.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, but the rest of the article, I just want the chart, and I got it. Okay, but however, that's phenomenal. Aside from that, so tell me, I'm sure you've got a couple dots there. Maybe not consciously or subconsciously. People go through. There's a meeting. There's this, that. What are some of those key things that are signals for you that really gets you excited? I mean, I know it's sometimes hard to say that.
It is hard to say. I mean, you know, it's interesting.
Or how about, is it easier to say which ones you don't like?
You know, I answer every email that comes into my box. I look really at everything that comes into my box. I feel like, you know, it's really hard being an entrepreneur, and to cold call someone randomly is great. I do not answer LinkedIn emails. It's just like, if I'm out there, you can find me. I'm not answering to you on LinkedIn. And, you know, sometimes I read these decks and I think, damn, that's really interesting, or not for me. And again, that's a lot of gut. But
so tell us a little bit about that gut. I know it's hard to describe. Like, so what's the not for me? You look at it and could be anything.
Well, you know, I hate to build a better mousetrap.
Okay.
It's like, I hate to build a better mousetrap.
So that's a very important
total,
thing. Right.
Like, I hate it. Unless it's a mousetrap that hasn't been changed in 35 years.
Okay.
That's one. I'm not like one of these super duper technology nerds. It's just not me, and I'm not going to provide value to a company like that. So like, if you're doing security, it's probably not for me. I really don't like the kids space.
Why is that?
Because my kids are adults. Like, I'm done with it. I mean, I get it, but it's not for me. You know, I'm just not.
That makes sense.
You know,
I like it. But it's very practical. You know, I'm trying to dig in to understand some of these things.
It's like what I like. You know, I mean.
And the goal is helping filter the stuff's coming to you, so that those that are going to send
totally filter.
But I'm helping you filter so that the other ones are not going to send those to you.
You know, I don't like wearables at all. I think it's a blip on a screen into something bigger that's going to happen. Maybe it's 5 years, but what's interesting is
it's a blip. It might happen. It's not that it's not going to happen.
It's happening,
right?
But you know, it's going to go up, and then what happens? Because it's going to change, and that's my opinion.
You mean the camera?
It's something.
Right.
You know, it
takes a picture every 30 seconds.
That's fine, but like, you know, there's a lot of these wearables. They're all personal. It's how they look. You know, I don't like wearables, so I don't touch that. You know, as a VC, you probably should invest in some wearables if that's part of your thesis, because that's what you're paid to do. That's what your LPs want to see you do. You'll learn for the next one. You know, as an angel, I'm not interested in the first round that I don't believe is going to make it.
Absolutely.
I'm interested in the second round.
Okay, good.
Okay?
Good.
I don't really love the health and wellness area either.
And why?
Because there's 4,000 things
too many
a day that are coming, and it's like, what's going to end up sticking on the wall? There's so many, it's ridiculous. Trust me, I'm one of those people that if I could get up in the morning and next to my bed to be like, I really feel like sweating today, maybe I'll take the blue pill. That would be for me.
That's great. So there'd be a row of different types of...
a whole row of different pills that I would take. So I don't really like that sector. But, you know, it's just like one of those things when someone walks in your office, you just... You know, you know, and my assistant always laughs, but she's like, she's like listening in the other door. She's like, I can tell the minute you get excited.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And is it, and she's usually sitting in the room, or she's next door?
She's like we have a very open sort of office.
So there's a vocal sound when you get excited in your discussion.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. I get excited, you know. So, and, you know, and again, I answer cold emails. I mean, so I've invested in people blind, you know, out of nowhere, and I'm like, this makes great sense to me. I really think you're great. Okay,
and so the signal of the sectors that you like, the obviously follow-ups. Talk a little bit about you're investing very early, sometimes first money in. Do they have to have a prototype? Do they have to have a deck?
Oh, yeah.
They have to have all that stuff? I mean, is it or is it
no ideas?
Okay, no ideas. It's got to be working.
It's got to be working.
Okay, so that's another filter.
Yes.
Got it. So there's a prototype or something that's semi-validated.
Yes.
Or at least a signal to validation.
Yes.
Okay. What's another signal that gets you excited? Is it something that deals with you a practical level on a daily basis these days, or things that you interact with, or is it also, hey, I'm fascinated with that business space. It seems like it's got to be disrupted. Is one more than the other?
Probably more in the latter than in the earlier. You know.
Because some people say, if I don't use it on a daily basis on the consumer world, I don't want to invest.
No. It's more about what I think is where we're going down the pike. You know, I mean, I think that is one of the things is why people don't invest in better mousetraps. At least I don't think really good investors invest in better mousetraps, is because, you know, for instance, like a perfect example, you go somewhere and you're talking to a bunch of people that have nothing to do with the internet. Like, they're not in this whole technology space, you know, which is like seeing the future. And people say, wow, that's so amazing, this product. And it's like, yes, and that's why we invested in it 5 years ago.
Got it. So thinking about going down the pipe, I mentioned my keynote this morning, my future of cameras. I've been photographing for 24 years, and I can't wait for my satellite selfie. I click a button, we look up, and it'll take a picture and send it to us. So that's might be much further.
Yes.
It's going to happen in our lifetime. I fully believe it. But when you say down the pipe, and you say, okay, it's going to happen in 10 years, perfect. Do you have any kind of feeling of, because sometimes you can be too early when you say down the pipe.
Oh,
so is there a feeling of which this is going to happen in 10 years?
Well, here's a perfect example. So I'm working on this project, and the question is, do we put parking spots in this project? Because if we don't put them in, we only get to have so much space. But if we put them in, we get more space. Mm-hmm. That was a big conversation. And why? Because I'm not so sure, sooner than we think, that less and less people are owning cars. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you read about that city in South Korea that was it's totally cool, no cars.
Fascinating, yeah.
Fascinating. Next generation is much more bikes, different kinds of transportation.
Smaller cars, too.
Smaller cars, Uber, and cars that are driverless. And so
they need parking spaces.
They do need parking spaces,
but there's not as many.
There'll be different kinds of parking spaces because it will all be done through technology. You won't have a human being driving them up and down there. They're going to be able to park and
automatically, like those bikes that go down and get organized. Right?
So I ended up meeting this guy who happens to who's second generation of a family that owns all of these parking garages in New York. And I said to him, what are you doing with all those parking garages? Because what do you see as the future? So because I will tell you, there's very few spaces in New York for events where you can have 500 people over the course of the day. And he's like, it's very funny you're saying that. We're actually turning some of our parking garages into that.
That's fascinating.
And I was like, smart, very smart, second generation man.
That's very interesting, because we had a discussion last night that it was a meeting for a big photo agency. It happened to be in the top level of a private garage in Paris, where the collector cars were there, and there was a great event space. I mean, it was a phenomenal space. Cool. So questions, anybody? We got 6 minutes left. I've got a ton more, but I want to make it, we're all in this thing together. So who has questions?
It's been golden, everything you've shared today. I have a quick question about
who's talking? Oh, in the middle. Oh, he's our expert question guy. Go.
Yes, I have to start the questions.
Yeah, go for it.
I think you invested in Makers Row several years ago.
Yes, I did.
And they are an amazing company that uses visuals. Video has been their first thing that they did, right? Mm-hmm. Do you see anything happening that was made in USA, right?
That's all it's about.
Right. Do you see anything coming in your emails, in your daily emails, that is made in Bangladesh?
No, I don't. It's interesting, though, because, I actually came out of the retail wholesale business in my earlier life. And I was involved in the retail wholesale business when we started making a lot of goods in China. I was still making a bunch of products in Long Island City, which allowed me very quick turnover. But it was interesting. People were doing tons of stuff in China. And again, technology was different. So, you had to have 1,200, 2,400, 3,600 minimums to make it worth your while when it landed, loaded, and ended up at your door with taxes. And then, of course, selling it and markup and what have you not. And because of sort of what's happening in manufacturing and with technology and with the strength of the dollar, is that it is just as worthwhile producing certain items in the United States that it might not have been 10 years ago. And so we're seeing a shift in manufacturing. We're seeing a lot of manufacturing in Vietnam. I went to this event last night. My husband spoke out about Bitcoin. And as we become more of a global community, and you have something like Bitcoin, where it's easier to process payment in Bangladesh without having to worry about going through banks and what have you not, we're going to see a lot more change in regards to production.
Great. Any other questions? Great. There's a question right over down here. While you're going there, Becca, real quickly, Joanne, I forgot to ask you, regular typical ticket size for initial investment for the audience?
Usually $50,000 and under, and
okay.
I have to own 1% of the company, and I make
sure... 1% of the company?
1%. That's my deal, 1%. And then when I get a side letter that allows me to continue to keep my prorated share at 1% as long as I want until I have enough money in that company that I think, you know what, I'm enough at risk.
Okay, great. Question over here.
Hi. In these times when you can do a video conference anytime with anyone, anywhere, how sensitive are you to investing in someone locally, or do you pressure your entrepreneurs to move closer to where the action is for them?
It's a good question. I know a lot of the people in San Francisco are like, you need to move here. You know what? It's bullshit. I actually do like New York, but I have investments in San Francisco, I have investments in Los Angeles, and I have investments in Europe. And I have a great investment in Berlin, a couple of them. And I met this woman. We have Skyped several times, and I've spent a lot of time with them and her. With the company's called Clue. And you know, actually, two of the women that are on stage here, one's in Atlanta, one's in San Francisco, and I would say that they would both tell you that it's irrelevant.
Great question. Other questions? I can't believe you guys don't have other questions. Great. There's one over there. Got 2 minutes left. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt yourself, Becca.
And we're lower heels for today.
No, that's okay. All's good.
Hello, thank you for coming. It's great that you have such a focus on women. The tech world does itself a disservice and misses out on a lot of talent because it's oftentimes not very friendly towards female talent. So what are the best and worst things a company can do to attract great female talent?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I was going to mention this earlier when we were talking. It was going through my head. Is that the good news is we're all having this conversation about women, right? Mm-hmm. This is not something that's sort of like behind, you know, the curtain anymore. And even this week, someone in San Francisco is getting really, you know, excited about doing something about making a stink about women entrepreneurs and how they should be more highlighted. I will tell you that they're out there. They're at meetups, they're at events. I think New York is much more friendly towards women and women entrepreneurs. But when I get a deck and I open it and there's 4 smiling men there, I delete. It's like if you can't figure out.
I knew we'd get more signals. This is good. I knew they were there, Joanne. I wanted to get them out.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't figure out at the very beginning how to create diversity in your company and create a product and a business that has, you know, a gender balance in the back end of your business, that says something.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I think I've mentioned I run a monthly entrepreneur dinner. 30 people. There's 480 people in it. It's exactly half men and women execs in the 480, and each dinner is the half. We're working towards that to get us to have half of the speakers here.
Which is great.
Which we're about 35, 40% and people, but I'm not happy until it's 50.
Right. Well, the issue is women will say, I don't know, I'm really busy.
Well, I think that's a whole other conversation that I'd love to have with you, okay? But on a closing note, this has been fantastic. We could probably talk for a long time. I'd like to go back to, in a very direct, as you are, way, what's the thing you love, the personality trait of entrepreneurs that you love and hate in one-word answers? What do you love?
I love scrappy.
Scrappy's great. What do you hate?
I hate arrogance.
Okay, fantastic. So I am passion and selfish. On that note, round of applause for Joanne. Thank you very much for coming.